welcome everybody. If you're watching live, as always, please feel free to ask any questions along the way. If you think you might like to come on the show yourself, please do get in contact. My details are on the channel's About page. Let's get started with today's guest. That's Tom Fleet. Hello, Tom.
Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, fine, thanks. How are you doing?
Yes, yeah, very well, very well.
Good.
Nice
Would
to
you
be
like
here.
to just very quickly say who you are and what you do?
Okay, so I'm Tom Fleet. My day job is a consultant engineer for a company called In Music Brands, and I occasionally do some marketing work at Hexa that some of you may have read already.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let's start with your childhood then. I think you mentioned when we were talking beforehand a particular cardboard costume that your mum made for you. Can you just talk to us about that quickly and how that sort of went?
The Halloween costume. So yeah, this is probably my earliest memory of anything electronics that kind of grabbed my interest. Probably around the age of 7, my mum built me this lovely kind of this lovely cardboard robot costume for one
Okay.
Halloween, and my dad had improvised this kind of really simple string of series string of LEDs and a 9-volt battery and this little switch, and I was taken by it. These little tiny plastic blobs of light that you could just turn on and off. And I remember harvesting it out of the costume some days later and rigging it up so it would trigger when my door was opened. And it's really, really simple by to what I know today's standards. But
Yeah.
yeah. Looking back, that's quite a fun memory.
Awesome. And what did you get that to do after you took it out of the costume to keep using it effectively?
Oh, sorry.
You said you strung it up, and was it like just a fun light, or was it sort of indicating something?
No, the push button was kind of jury rigged, to trigger when the bedroom door was opened. But
Okay.
it kind of seems like a really superfluous notification. The door's already open, isn't it? But it didn't have any wire to work with; just had the original string. So make do.
Okay, very cool. About that age, did you sort of do any other sort of electronicsy projects, or have any other kind of playing, or is that kind of most of it?
That was most of it at that age. And I can remember we had a really, really basic Windows kind of 3.1 Toshiba laptop that I'd play around with, and it's all dot matrix printer. But it was just playing with paint and solitaire. That was about the breadth of it. There wasn't a lot going on back then.
Sure. Okay. And I think so. Soon after that cardboard costume, you moved off to Canada.
Yeah.
And that was for your dad's job. Is that right?
Yeah. So there's a company called Unilever. Most people maybe don't know it, but they'll know one of the brands. Dove's an example, Ben and Jerry's. Dad had spent many years working for these guys, and it was, in a nutshell, kind of a logistical advisor for where various processes and operations should be set up. And yeah, it just transpired there was a bit of an issue going on in Toronto, and yeah, they asked us if we'd like to accompany him as he went off to sort the place out. And yeah, we kind of jumped at the idea.
Okay.
A country with weather for a start. That's quite a prospect.
Not just grey.
Snow and sun, and it was. Yeah, off we went. Spent 4 years there.
Amazing.
Very, very beautiful country.
Was that sort of at the time? Was it expected to be for forever, or was it always planned that it would be a time, or is that something you weren't quite aware of as a child?
I think we were told we could expect it to be a couple of years. That it wasn't something we were just doing flippantly. Yeah, and I seem to recall there was kind of some discussion on whether or not we would at the end stay on, but there's people we know back here, and back we came.
Fair enough. Okay. You made a comment to me earlier as well about how the internet in Canada was a little different to in the UK. Did that sort of jumpstart any interests or abilities, I guess? The fact that you had this access, which you may not have had when you left.
No, I get to.
It just was what it was.
Yeah, it was what it was. I mean, just having general competence in terms of how a computer works. I remember when we were in school in Canada, they teach you how to touch type. It's
Okay.
actually part of the lesson plan, and just I don't think we really used a computer in school before leaving England. It
Interesting.
was,
Okay.
yeah, I assume that's probably helped a little bit. Yeah, yeah. Again, this was back in 97, 98, 99.
Right.
I was coming up to well, I think it was 8 until 12 was the age. And there wasn't there certainly wasn't the maker and tech scene that we have now in terms of resources,
Mm.
right?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, if you wanted to get into programming, you would have to have been taught how to program assembly onto a PIC or something like that. It was
Mhm.
science. So yeah, no, just the luxuries of having really high speed internet was that's so much.
Amazing. I remember that kind of time in the UK. It was all painful internet access. Not fun.
No, no,
um,
quite a
yeah.
oh no, come
So so did you have any other sort of hobbies
on.
as a child that you were quite keen on, or was it sort of typical child? You went to school, you did your stuff, and there wasn't anything that really stood out for you.
I was never too big on sports, right?
Okay.
My first experience of football was this break here where I took a penalty kick to the face, and that kind of set the tone.
Right.
Wasn't a great fan after that, and that was way back in primary school. So no, when I was in Canada, we got into some fun with model rockets, little Estes black powder things. Buy the
Okay.
kit, glue it together, and send it off, never to be seen again.
Awesome.
Yeah, there are some less than successful attempts at my own designs, and turns out aerodynamics is much harder than you think it is.
Fair enough.
Some quite interesting escapades of running away from some cartwheeling,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
less than optimum designs. But yeah. Again, had a little bit of fun with that when I came back to the UK, but restrictions being what they are, it's a little bit less frivolous of a hobby. You've got to have explosive licenses and all this fun stuff
Sure, sure.
to be compliant, and yeah, just takes the fun out of it a bit.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, very good. So, I think then you said around the age of 12, was it? You came back to the UK,
Yeah.
and did you sort of got back into the education the way it works over here versus over there and things? It wasn't too painful.
Yeah, I mean, coming back, start of what the UK year 8, that was fine. By that point, I was used to moving around. Kind
Mhm.
of fit into the lessons quite easily because they don't seem to. It yeah, it's not. They don't seem to want too much of you at too much out of you at year 8, right? Um, yeah, I came back, went through the GCSE years. Yeah, and then, as was this school's way, went off. They sent us on the application route to the local sixth form, right?
Okay.
And this is where the path starts to deviate a little bit from the norm. Yeah, I personally found that trying to study as many topics, I was loaded in with electronics, with maths, with chemistry, with oh, my mind's just blanked at the last one. Sorry,
That's okay. Yeah.
as you can see, it wasn't something I've really integrated with. I didn't really see how you could spread yourself across these quite different subjects to the
Mhm.
level of detail that would capture actually engage you. You can learn how
Right.
to answer the questions and prep for the test, right? But you, you if you want to actually develop a passion for something, I think you need to spend time working it and actually practicing that craft. And it's I yeah, I suppose you can't really do that for
Yeah.
as
Okay.
many subjects as that at once.
So the way you said you got sort of put into, I think you used the word loaded into maybe. Was that kind of it was the thing that you were advised to do, or was it something that you picked
Um,
those subjects and you were keen enough to do them, and then it didn't turn out quite how you hoped?
I well no, so in GCSE I took the separate sciences.
Mhm.
I was engaged towards that track, if you will, but the
Right.
actual there was no kind of suggestion of maybe go and look at an apprenticeship route or something else. It
Okay.
was you did quite well in the separate sciences. You should go to this sixth form college, right?
Okay. Interesting.
That was the general approach of the school I was at. And it's kind of traditional as well. My dad's got a degree. They bring you up thinking, oh yes, you're going to go to university, and then it doesn't quite work out, does it? Sometimes.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. So so having started that, what then happened? That was A levels, I guess. That you're doing the electronics and the physics and things, and
I think it's about 6 months, and then decided it just wasn't really working out.
Okay.
Well, the next year round again, kind of decided to change up one of the subjects. I think it was chemistry, no, electronics for photography. Try something with a bit of an artistic outlook. And again, lasted about 6 months, and after that, decided needed to get a job, right?
Right.
Didn't have many options. Signed up with a local temp agency, and after a few kind of dud starts there. So they didn't have some great options. I luckily was landed at a local company that developed scientific instrumentation.
Okay.
Just on the assembly line. Soldering came quite easily. Figured out how to get a nice, decent joint. And then after that, I spent a little bit of time there. Eventually rooting through the scrap bins because they had some really cool stuff. I'm like a magpie, right?
It's fair enough.
But little electromechanical assemblies, things like that. And one day started noticing that we had a surplus of kind of scrap boards that were based around a little PIC Basic microcontroller.
Okay.
And one of our tasks on the line was programming these humidity transmitters with the code because they came in blank. And with this setup, you're not exactly programming compiled bytecode, right? It's human readable source. Right. You've got that open in your editor, and you can start to recognize there's some fairly implicitly named kind of statements and functions, and you can kind of start to see what happens if you change a couple of bits here and there, and then you realize that you're.
So was this Tom on the production line just tweaking the software as it went out the door, or was
this? Oh God, no! Atex would have a heart attack. No, this would just be playing around on lunch break for lack of anything else to do for a half hour. And kind of eventually tweaked what was going on with a little bit of Googling, and one day soldered on a row of LEDs onto one of the ports, and finally found some reference codes and managed to cobble together this really, really simple, very, very basic Gaussian scanner, just going back and forth.
Okay.
And that was enough to kind of catch the eye of one of the technical directors there.
Right.
And I am absolutely blessed that they were a place that kind of recognized the enthusiasm. I clearly, at that point, didn't have the requisite qualifications to go to any other company. If you'd applied for an R&D position, they would, you'd get laughed at, right? But getting taken on as a junior engineer with the intention of kind of furthering the education that I had, that was something that these guys wanted to run ahead with. And I was picked up into the R&D team. I was then sent on an apprenticeship scheme to get kind of a basic engineering operations.
Okay, and that was within the company still?
Yes, yeah. So I was in that R&D team for probably 5 of the 7 years I was at that company.
Okay.
Sorry, it might actually numbers might be a little bit off on that. It was a little while ago, but yes. So while I was at, I obtained this basic engineering, so learning how to turn metal, how to use a mill, that sort of thing.
Okay, some broad engineering then.
Some basic electronic engineering in the background, op-amp circuits, that sort of thing. And after that, I finished that. Loved it. Started to progress a bit further in my technical competence and responsibility, and after that was sent to obtain a Bachelor of Engineering degree.
Okay.
At the local Polytech, and as I've mentioned, without the AS or without the A levels, that on day release, 1 day a week, that took quite a number of years to obtain. But it's great fun. Yeah, that team did some fascinating work. Supporting some of our products, afforded me the chance to see parts of the world. Yeah, I got sent to Shanghai twice. That was
Amazing.
incredible. That it's a beautiful company to work for. Like, actually made me who I am now, I think, probably.
That's awesome. Yeah, such a cool and well appreciated sort of place to have been by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it was quite a unique company by most standards, I guess. A lot of places want just streamline, the right people in for the job. And sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of inefficient because you kind of want people who actually who practice what they're doing, I guess, who enjoy it. Right.
So can you just sort of outline the progression, I guess, from at the beginning you were fiddling with LEDs in your lunch break, making them blink, and then towards the end of your career, your time at that company, what were you responsible for?
So let's see. Try and piece it together. I think it probably kind of
difficult question. Sorry.
So, some of my basic tasks to start with actually was using VB, so Visual Basic, to write simple utilities, helper functions, that sort of thing. Stuff to interface with serial ports to talk to the instruments, and then that starts to give you a bit of an idea of how data is structured, how to write code, and how to Google and copy and paste from Stack Overflow as well. But after that, there was this weird kind of time again before Arduino became mainstream. There were some C#.net enabled microcontroller boards.
Okay.
And yeah, it just seems okay. Well, so if I install this package into this IDE, which I'm familiar with, I can now actually there's this MCU board which I can start to toggle pins, and I can now start to create these really basic devices. And then look, here's Arduino, and that changed everything. That was that availability of information more than anything else.
Okay.
Because there was an explosion of documentation and community projects when it came out, and it's not so much Arduino specifically as the Atmega 168, but the idea of
it's that community, isn't it? And the documentation, the community, the sharing of knowledge. That really was awesome.
Yeah, and then there was when the MO boards came out with the Zero as well. At that point, I started to get familiar with the Atmel devices themselves, because there were certain bits of our equipment we had to qualify and certify. So you can't really drop something with an Arduino compiled set of libraries into gas fields, right? It's started looking at the native kind of tool solution. So became familiar with using vendor specific IDEs, which then meant you become you can take one problem and then transport it to multiple other approaches. It's kind of very just expansive time in terms of how to approach problems. Really.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
that sounds really good, I think.
It sounds like I've deviated a bit. I feel like I'm rambling.
No, it's fine. So towards your time at that company, then you were sort of finishing up with uni, I think, by the sounds of it, and you'd got your bachelor's degree. You'd sort of got a lot of competence under your belt, and all due to being noticed, which is fantastic. What happened next?
Okay, so at this point, the company has kind of taken on an odd structure, and where instead of an R&D department, you had an R department and a D department, and the development team were kind of doing some blue sky stuff with optical spectrometry. And there were 5 of us on the team. I was kind of doing the mid-level sort of electronics, interface output blocks, that sort of things. We built a spectrometer that was industry leader in the face of GE.
Awesome.
We did some really, really fun stuff. And then the company was brought out by some venture capitalists who decided that looked really expensive on the budget sheet. So they corrected that financial. And yeah, that was it. The dream was over, as it were.
Okay.
It's went off a little bit broken-hearted. Yeah, it was a really, really nice place to work. But went off with a lot of knowledge and a lot of competence. Frankly, that place trained me very well. I was able to then quite swiftly start working for a company called AMS. People don't really maybe initially know who they are or what they do, but if you've ever heard the term environmental sensing, or solid state metal oxide gas sensors, they were the pioneers for those.
Okay.
So I was working for as an applications engineer for this kind of very interesting solid state chemical sensing technology. But the odd thing about air quality, right, is it's a very hard one to sell sensors for, because you can sell an air quality sensor into every iPhone or whatever on the planet, and in most cases it's just going to tell people that the air's not very good. What are they going to do?
Now what? Okay.
Yeah, and you could sell the metrology grade instrumentation to organizations or bodies of responsibility, and again, it's just going to it's so we basically found there wasn't much of a market for this novel little chip. We had this idea that it would be in every wearable. It would tell you, open a window or such. But if you'd ever go into a main city area, it would be off the charts. And air quality is actually, that was pretty eye-opening. So unfortunately, we found again a bit of a lack of financial backing for continuing that division. So AMS shut that down, and I went off to find another job.
Okay.
And found myself then working for a division of Fluke, working on some thermometry logging systems. So thermocouple loggers that would go through things like reflow ovens or solar panel production furnaces. The most obscene one we had was a foundry application. That was, he's inches away from this red hot metal going through this furnace for 12 hours. And some of the engineering in that, it's phenomenal. You're trying to limit the flow of heat into the assembly. There's certain types of batteries you can use. We had to try and support a modulation scheme that would be able to, if you've got an arc blast furnace, which is just creating this immense amount of RF noise, trying to get a radio signal out of there, that poses some quite interesting engineering challenges.
Fascinating, yeah. So what were you involved with? What is your role at that point?
At that point, I was working on the upgrading the calibration system used for the thermocouple interfaces.
Yeah,
and I think I was there about 12 months before the Brexit happened, and I did.
Oh, poor Tom. Time.
So we kind of put the brakes on a little bit. I mean, tangentially, there was also infrared cameras have come along a long way, and there's since been quite a shift from what I've seen in terms of people using this single point solution that doesn't have consumable factors to it. You can see the surface emissivity of something and just go, oh, it's at the right temperature, that's fine. It's always online. It's poor little thermometry division didn't really do too well.
Oh, that's a shame.
So by now I'm becoming a little bit used to being a bit more fluid in who I work for. I discovered Twitter in the last couple of years during this. When I started playing around with the Atmel development boards back at Michelle, I started tweeting about making some LEDs blink, this sort of thing. Excuse me, sorry, I've got a bit of a chest cold going on. And that seemed to get some positive engagement. I still can't quite say what kind of spurred me into doing it. Some sort of geeky fascination, I guess. But the guy who was running the social media account for Atmel happened to be a guy called Yeah, Atmel.
Okay.
He was responding to some of these. I was getting retweets and views and likes. Yeah, it's really, really small numbers, but I was finally finding people who were going, "Hey, cool little blinky lights," because within your social circle there aren't too many of those, are there? So that was kind of cool, and I got started speaking to Artie over a couple of DMs, and it transpired that he was also doing a bit of director work at Hackster, which is maybe where a lot of people might actually know me from.
Okay.
And yeah, he said he was looking for people who could help promote some of the projects that we were seeing on Twitter. So some of the stuff that people might have seen, like the Open Book project from Jerry. There's the Orange Crab from Greg DeVille. Like it was a really busy time in the maker market. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of really cool work coming out and showcasing some really great talent. And yeah, there's places like there are certain outlets that just kind of do a show. Here's a PCB. Here's the link to the website, and it's great. But that's actually there's people who want to talk proper shop on stuff. So
yeah. So how was that process for you? What did you have to do? Did you talk to the designers and the team making the thing and kind of pull out some knowledge and share it, or did you hands-on with the units? What was going on there?
So it kind of it's ranged from a whole scope of things. So initially it was kind of making some doing some guesswork, trying to find a repo to clone, having a look at the hardware files.
Okay. Yeah.
If there was a blog or something associated, just trying to paint a picture of the product or the project. And then there were certain people who were just doing such cool work. Kind of occasionally would reach out and say, "This is awesome, I love it," and then you'd get a bit of a dialogue going, and in some cases that would actually lead to being able to offer some design feedback. There's been some really great people along the way. In some cases, I've been sent prototypes. I've got a couple of bits of tech hanging around which I use nearly daily, which I'm very thankful for.
Awesome. Is there anything in particular that you covered from or through Hackster that sort of stands out in your history or your memory?
I think I remember being at most people will have heard of the Flipper Zero, I think. I remember writing about that, and this is one of the few projects where people like I've had I say people, I've had one person come up to me unexpectedly who I wasn't aware that was at all technically minded, right, saying, I've read this article about this Flipper. Look at this gadget I've got. I've been playing around trying to clone my bank card. It's not working, of course, but I'm familiar with the Flipper. This is the article I've written. It turns out, this is crazy. Aside from that, the Open Book was actually quite a really wonderful project to roll along with as well. That's got a really good ethos behind it. Joey does some great design work, and he did some stuff which has been absolutely beautiful to kind of run through. And I'm not going to say document because this hardware does that itself, but to kind of
you just kind of I'm sure many people are aware of what it is, but just sort of the e-reader, what it is, kind of thing.
It's an open source Kindle alternative.
Okay.
No, it's not there. I thought it was it's somewhere else. But he's done a phenomenal job of it. It's come through many iterations, but I think currently it's based around a Raspberry Pi 2040 microcontroller. It's just this phenomenal little self-contained device. A worthy contender to the Kindle, I'd say. If you haven't heard of it, go check it out. It's hugely well documented. Open source, of course. People can build their own.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Very cool. So you started working for Hackster, and it seems to be your way that you sort of you start fiddling with something, someone notices, and then you get this awesome job out of it. I'm lucky. I think. Yeah, it's worked out really well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Where are we up to now? Working for Hexter. So Fluke decided to shut down that division, and now I'm left kind of wondering what to do next. And an agency gets in touch and says, there's a company which is looking for someone to kind of do a proof of concept, for this wireless LoRa sensor device. I don't go into specifics, but yeah, I got invited to come and speak to this startup. It turned out to just be one guy. He then contracted me to do the entire, I kind of vaguely want to use a LoRa module, and I want production Gerbers at the other end, right?
Right.
So this is getting quite fun now. It's RF design, doing some proper application talk with engineers, going back and forth because, yeah, I've been employed as myself now. This needs to be perfect. Negotiated the rate, which yeah, you want your client to be happy, and if you're doing RF, good. Everyone knows that that's just a whole heap of voodoo if you're not really sure what you're up to. And trying to pack, so this was LoRa on 868 megahertz, and trying to pack that onto a 25 mil diameter circular PCB. I need the antenna, the ground reference for the antenna alone. There's a lot of fun with that, trying to find an antenna that works quite neatly.
Interesting. Are you able to share what the application was at all, or is that something that you can't really talk about?
I think I can. It was so it was for use in applications such as heavy machinery or large installations where you need to have very accurate measurements on the torsion of a bolt that's used in the assembly. For things like windmills offshore with that sort of buffering of the wind. Again, I guess I'm told that occasionally things start to maybe loosen, or there'll be these hugely expensive yearly, I believe, maintenance visits where people will go and they will check the torsion of every single bolt. These offshore crews that have to visit every pylon, and that's phenomenally expensive.
Right.
So the idea of this was to obtain real-time data just online for every bolt. That's it.
Okay.
And I think they did quite well with that.
Very good.
Yeah. That was just that was a single contract, and after that, I kind of realized, well, I'm rolling solo now. I think.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So this was Tom Fleet as an individual, or were you setting up a company? What was going on?
It's just me. I don't think I've had a number of times trying to think of a brand. It's an odd one. I've always had a background interest in all things flashy LEDs, right? And trying to find a market avenue for that sort of thing. It's great until people hear the cost of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, if you're doing bespoke one-offs and installations and such, it's not cheap work. It takes time, and everyone wants a flashy kind of hat or fedora until they see, oh yeah, that's 250 quid, right? So now this is just me thinking, well, I can actually just go from place to place and get paid to solve a problem.
Okay.
And yeah, thankfully, it seems to be that I'm getting thrown problems that I enjoy solving.
Awesome.
A little while after this, again, it sounds like a series of rather fortunate events. If you look at it, it's the opposite of Lemony Snicket. I had an email from a chap who is one of the technical directors at a company where I kind of do the majority of my day work now, which is in music. I still don't know who, but someone had tipped him off that I was a dab hand at doing electrical work. They had some rework that needed doing on a prototype instrument, or a set of prototype instruments. I suppose I can kind of say we recently launched quite a successful keyboard synthesizer. It kicks ass. It's amazing. This was some support work for that.
Okay.
And after doing that, there were a couple of other mods that needed to be done, and then there was this one set of work whereby we started to notice some kind of very interesting glitches, and it was some clock streams were getting confused. They were getting some latency and some jitter.
Mm-hmm.
And this, probably for context, the way the company is set up is that the office here is a software office, so they're not. They're amazingly talented at software, but hardware is, you know, it's a different language to them. And with my background of kind of doing industrial design, the first thing you start to look at is what's it related to, right? So is it temperature related? Is it vibration? Is it something to do? You know, is there a roll-off frequency? And discovered if I smash it with some halogen lights, oh well, we have a near guaranteed success, a near guaranteed incidence of this glitch occurring.
Right.
So then dug a little bit into the design of the product, kind of put a case back that it looks like we had some EMC, EMI filters that maybe weren't quite the right part combinations. And after that, I've just been kind of hanging around since, getting stuck into all the other brands. And
awesome.
And yeah, it's a phenomenal job. I get to do some really cool stuff.
So it sounds like for this company, you're kind of on that hardware software boundary, which is where a lot of people are quite uncomfortable, but you sound very happy there.
It's there's a phenomenal team, right? A lot of our products are based around it's common knowledge that we use a Linux compute module in all of our synthesis. We have that talking to, you know, it's embedded MCUs that are doing MIDI firmware. We have you know, the applications written in low-level C running on this embedded Linux platform. There's this whole it's an amazing system once you get your head around it. But yeah, I suppose it does kind of make a lot of people uncomfortable. I love it. It's, you know, you start at the power socket and you end up at the pixels on the display, right? It's
awesome. Nice. Do you find yourself kind of acting as support for the software team in your city, or is it more collaborative and you know?
There's a kind of a baseline level of maybe we've installed the wrong bootloader and now it needs, you know, fixing. Right. Yeah, there's maintenance side of stuff. But no, we have 23 brands under the parent company.
Okay, that's significant.
Yeah, so we've got, most people might know Akai. They're used like the beat makers, the hip hop production, all that. We've got Denon as well. So there's DJ equipment. We've got lighting companies. Then there's just always new stuff coming down the pipeline that I get to kind of sink my teeth into.
Really
it's phenomenal.
Does that have any impact on the desk we can see behind you?
Monitors
stacking up there, and
there is some undisclosed stuff running back there, which I'm not going to go too far into. But that's the work from home desk, which is a pretty cool thing to be able to say. There's 4 turntables.
Fantastic. Very cool.
Yeah. So that's pretty much me up to the present day.
Up to date. Yeah.
Yeah. This is where I'm at now. I don't actually feel like the day job is that interesting and there's so much to do that it's I guess this is now kind of shifted towards my hobby is in seeing what we can do for the next generation of stuff. Now I'm hacking away at bits and pieces of what we've got, trying to see what can talk to what. And unfortunately that doesn't leave me with a lot that I can kind of now show off in terms of a show and tell.
No, that's okay.
Not worries. Without a phone call, I imagine, anyway.
That's fair enough. Yeah, no, don't worry at all. So in terms of the work that you're up to, I'm not going to ask you details and secrets and things, but you know, what is your favorite discipline, I guess, you know, the most interesting, gripping thing that you have to work with? That's a difficult question. Sorry, pounce that on you.
I don't.
Or you're going to answer everything. Yeah.
I think it has to be everything. I go through phases. I can't control what grabs my attention currently, so it's nice to have a big old stack of things which I can jump back and forth between. And yeah, yeah, if I was doing layout or PCB design all day every day, I'd grow bored and tired of it. If I were doing, if I were playing around with the Linux kernel all day every day, I'd grow tired of that. It's
the variety keeps you interested.
Yeah, the variety is what does it. Yeah,
fantastic. Very good. Well, it's an awesome path to today. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, well, thank you for asking.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to shout about or sort of promote before we wrap up?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay. We put the link to your Hackster articles in the description, the video description, so people please check that out.
Yeah, I've been a little bit quiet on the platform as of late. I think I've kind of demonstrated how much of my attention the day job's getting, but I'm still keeping an eye out on just the next project that gets my attention. If anyone's got anything they really think is they want me to have a look at, I'd be more than happy to. I love getting sent things to dig into.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's been great talking to you. Yeah.
It's been great being here.
It's been really interesting to hear about your path, and I've probably said it before, and I'll say it again. It's the non-standard ones, the people who have a little bit of a wiggle along the way, which is the stories I like to hear the most. So I'm delighted that it's worked out so well for you, and thank you very much for sharing it with us.
Well, yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Well, in that case, goodbye from us, and we'll see you soon.
Take care. Bye.